Welcome to Two Girls Talk Transits with our hosts.
Hi, I'm Maddie delrae. I'm a professional practicing astrologer with a focus more on Hellenistic traditional astrology and with an intense love and desire for predictive transiting astrology.
And I'm Kaleigh Smith. I'm a healing coach and art therapy grad student with a slight obsession with reading the stars. I combine astrology, spirituality, and traditional psychology to help people live with intention. Without further ado, we welcome you to Two Girls Talk Transits, where we talk about all the upcoming astrological transits and what you can do to keep yourself sane and absolutely aligned.
Hey everyone, welcome to Two Girls Talk Transits. We're your hosts. I'm Maddie, and this is Kaleigh. We'll be going over the astrological forecast for February 1st through the 10th. So, right off the bat, we still have a few planets lingering in the last degrees of Capricorn, and Mercury is there, and we'll be making a sextile to Neptune in Pisces around the 1st and the 2nd. So I don't know, it's a soft start to the month, but it's good for, really dreamy, idealistic beginnings and approaches, and maybe feeling inspired for taking action or looking at life a little differently. It can also be good for spirituality. How do you feel about starting off with some Mercury Neptune?
Yeah, I feel like it's kind of nice with that Neptune aspect. We have an opportunity to kind of jump into February with some I think for me, I'm gonna try to do like some spiritual practices. So I think it can be good for that kind of stuff. Anything like related to like yoga, meditation, spirituality. I also think Neptune can be really good for like creative works. So for people who are wanting to be a bit more creative, I feel like actually Aquarius season in general is really good for that.
Mhm.
Um, so it's nice with, yeah, just Neptune being here with being able to dive into that.
Yeah, and just what I was thinking of, I mean, this is more of a longer term foreshadowing, but this year we are getting into that a lot more Neptunian energies, anyways, as Saturn is in Pisces and Saturn is getting closer to Neptune.
Mhm.
So we're going to be experiencing a lot of Neptune. And I think just getting familiar with that confusion is going
Mm.
to get you far. And being more comfortable with that kind of mystical side of life and trusting that it's just this is like a key way, because I mean, Pisces season is also right around the corner, and we won't be moving away from Neptune anytime soon. So,
Yeah, I quite like Neptune. I think it's good. And that's interesting that you said that Saturn is moving towards Neptune. I feel like I can very subtly feel the beginnings of that, like getting a bit more serious about my creative projects,
mm,
like a bit more plan oriented. Now it's not so much like usually my creations just exist in the mind and I don't like bring them down. So I kind of feel like we might be moving into a space where like bringing them down and actually setting like plans to achieve our creative goals because creation, like when we allow ourselves to create, I feel like it really boosts confidence and our belief and our trust in self. And yeah, I think it's interesting with Neptune because creation, I feel like can help us paint a picture of ourselves that we didn't really even know was there. Like we can,
mhm.
when we create it, like we're like, wow, I didn't even know that was inside of me, you know?
Right, because like Saturn is structure and form. So Saturn is that kind of hard matter, material of things, and Neptune is the opposite of that. So now we are literally giving form to what has been previously formless.
Yeah, I could totally feel that. Have you been doing any creative works?
No, not that I feel like I have, but I do feel like that I've been getting more concrete about my spirituality and my beliefs and how I practice more. So I think before it was just new and exciting to do rituals and to try these things out, but now it's really becoming more of a structure in my life than it probably was before. Like, no, this is foundational now. I can't just do this whimsically, but
That's
this
really
is
interesting
important.
yeah, that's really interesting that you say that actually, because there is an element of discipline, I think, that needs to be applied to spirituality for it to be effective.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and if you're not, if you just show up one time, you will get some benefits, but you won't get like the entire package. So,
Yeah. It's not all
mhm,
just good vibes. Like it's good vibes plus some work. And yeah,
mhm. Yeah,
definitely.
100%.
But shortly after that, Mercury will then be entering into Aquarius on the 5th of February and will then conjunct Pluto. So that was the big talk that we had in our podcast last month was Pluto in Aquarius, Pluto in the Sun conjunction on the 20th. How that brought up a lot about outer events and wars. And so that was a really disrupting week and period of time for me, and I know a lot of other people. And I do think that Mercury coming to meet Pluto the same kind of way the sun did, it's just going to give more information around what happened the 20th, the 21st, and so on, if that was kind of a chaotic day. And it's definitely intense. Like it would be a lot of intense conversations, I can imagine.
Mm-hmm. What do we know what happened, like any kind of news related things that happened that day? When the sun
I'm
was conjunct?
So, I mean, from terms of major events, the International Court, I for IFS is what they're called. Like it's again, all this stuff are just systems that humans made up and they only have power to what we give them. But they are the International Court of Justice, and they have been, especially in South Africa, been really calling out Israel. And only recently, around that conjunction, they were meeting and talking about it. And now they have reached a ruling where they are kind of pressuring Israel to stop. It wasn't a perfect ceasefire, but it was like, no, this is serious genocide that's happening over
Yeah.
there, and it actually needs to be called out and dealt with. And so it's a high. It is like it's been a big spotlight on this undercurrent of what people have just been like iffy about. I do think.
Yeah, I think it is bringing up a lot of confusion for a lot of people. I think for me personally, I feel like a couple days ago I experienced like a lot of grief around the whole situation, and it was more so this feeling of like, how can this happen in, this day and age? Like, how can we allow this to happen as people? And I think a lot of people are asking themselves the same question. Like,
Yeah.
how did this slip through the cracks? How did this happen? And yeah, I think there is a lot of confusion around it.
Yeah, so hopefully with Mercury meeting Pluto, we will have more clarity in terms of the thought process and the planning and the mind and where we're going with this whole situation.
Yeah.
Um, but time will tell for sure.
Yeah.
So
But it
we'll
can also
see.
be happening like in people's, independent life too. It doesn't just have to be, yeah, like globally, this
Oh
can also
yeah.
be bringing more information to, yeah.
Yeah, like secrets coming to light, suddenly getting that piece of information that you've been trying to get a hold of, or having that real deep inner conversation that moves past the surface level. Those are all things that Mercury and Pluto can bring up for you personally.
That's interesting that you say like this deep inner conversation.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
can
Kind of
kind of,
those pulling up those feelings from the underworld. Yeah.
yeah, can kind of be like grappling with, yeah, those deeper emotions that we haven't been really willing to look at. Now they might kind of be inevitable.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that starts, that's a little bit of a shift, and I do think it will foreshadow the like second week of February more. But around the 7th, then we do have Venus and Capricorn making a trine to Uranus. So this is back to those earth signs, but this is, a connection or a kind of disruption, a change. There's excitement. This kind of stems from that creativity we may have been feeling with Mercury and Neptune, and now we are making a change, or connecting with people to make a collective direction shift. It's positive for relationships and feeling more excited. I think Uranus really wants us to get our energy up, and it's hard to do that in earth signs. We're so busy with the work. Yeah.
Yeah, that is true. That is true. I think what about like shifts around since it is in an earth sign? Is there like shifts around work and around how we're doing work and things like this?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't pigeonhole it into specifically just work, but I would say with Earth is our material world. And as a society, we are so focused on our material world, like consuming, purchasing items. So, but we do have all these other structures, like inspiration is not material, emotions are not material, and our thoughts and
Mhm.
creativity is not material, but everything else falls into the realm of earth. So it can be related to work, and it could relate to like just your practical world in terms of structures, like family structures, or how do you maintain a daily ritual and take care of your body, like what's that structure. Maybe shaking up your daily routine, maybe doing something different with a friend this day, going somewhere different, or maybe cleaning out a closet, or like beautifying the space, because Venus doesn't have to be necessarily about that connection with other people.
I'm wondering if it can like manifest as also like learning how much our material possessions and like our physical reality are fulfilling us on like a deeper or like kind of like a pleasure level because Venus is so associated with like pleasures. Because sometimes I feel like we can have this intention for our material reality to or our possessions to bring us a lot of joy. But it almost might be like a reassessment of that and maybe even inviting more pleasure into our material reality like you said, like organizing, or how can our spaces be more functional, or how can they be more enjoyable for us on a daily basis, kind of things like this.
Yeah, and I mean, I just think to like Earth is the element itself. It's the most slowest moving element. It's the most unmovable, and it's the most stable, right? So changes don't happen. So generally, when we're going through an Earth period of time, like we're just doing the same things over and over and over again, because that's how you build stability. That's how you build structure. It's just consistency, right? Well, then
Mhm.
when these planets run into Uranus, they're like, oh, shake up, oh, change, and it's more instantaneous, and it can be frustrating because you're like, I was doing the same thing for 10 days, like I don't want to change it now. But that change brings freshness and inspiration and excitement, and feeling more pleasure too, because that gives us adrenaline, that gives us chemicals in our mind that's like feels good.
Mhm.
So being open to that too.
Yeah, it's funny, like that like earthly energy, like sometimes we're like, "Ugh, I don't want to like do the same thing over and over again," and then we get into this vibe where like now I don't want to change, like now I want everything to be
Yeah.
the same. Yeah.
And then you're like, I'm bored, but I don't actually want to make a change. Like, I just want to feel better, right? Like, I
Oh
think
my gosh, I've been there so many
yeah,
times.
everyone does that. Like, I wish I had this. Okay, we'll go do no. Like, we all do that, right? We all do that. And I think Venus trine Uranus is like, fine, I do want to change. I will go make this disruption to my daily life. Like,
Yeah, which is good. I mean,
yeah,
the only thing constant is change. And I feel like, even if we hate it in the moment, we usually end up being grateful for it later on.
yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
So having that flexibility around the 7th is good. And I mean, also on this day, we get Neptune again with Mars making a sextile to Neptune. So
Mhm.
yeah, there is a lot that adds an element to like being more open to change because Neptune is more fluid and mobile and shifting. And then Mars being our action and energy. So taking inspired action, creative action, and actually making a shift or direction, even if you don't know what the outcome will be, because Neptune can cloud that, but moving forward anyway.
Yeah, I feel like this is bringing that, like, with the Mars energy. It's like, I don't know if this is correct, but I always look at Mars as like more of like the masculine, like now it's
Mm-hmm.
time to do and
Yeah.
action. And yeah, with that flowy Neptune aspect, it's interesting because those two signs are kind of, they're not at odds, but they're very different, you know.
Right.
Yeah. So, if anything, I think it'll be an interesting, like, energetic combination. I think it would be kind of fun to play around with and see how it manifests.
Yeah, I mean, like I see Mars as like that warrior with like a sword and a shield, like just like cutting the branches out of the way and walking through this path, right? Well, then if you add Neptune, Neptune's like all of a sudden you're like underwater and you're like trying to like swim through it and like cut away seaweed, but the seaweed just like doesn't cut. And
Yeah.
like that's what I feel like it is, but it's a different experience, right? Like you have to like the way that you approach your aggression and your energy, you now have to change it. You now have to like look at it different and try something new.
Yeah, that's interesting. I like your, like, your, what, I don't even know, pictorial picture image. Yeah, I was thinking of like, Mars could be like the warrior in the woods, and then he meets like the poet Neptune. And
Yeah.
and it's like, how do those two like exist in the same space? Like,
It's like trying
finding
to fight him and he's just reading him words of love and connection.
honestly. Yeah. But they can be, I think, yeah, I don't know. Neptune can kind of deepen, Mars, if Mars is kind of like being angry without a cause, Neptune can
Mm-hmm.
kind of like deepen the experience and bring that more like emotional like component to it, and kind of light Mars up in a way that's more meaningful and impactful.
Yeah, I think definitely. I mean, Neptune gives Mars a reason, and Neptune gives Mars inspiration too, less out of emotion, but more out of the greater good of the actions that we take for
Yeah.
everyone else and for our greater good of our future too.
Yeah, and if it were just Neptune by himself, he would just be reciting poems to the ethers. Yeah.
Getting nothing done. Yeah.
Yeah, literally.
Starving, probably. But that from there though we get into a much big shift as we start to approach this new moon in Aquarius. On the 8th we have the sun in Aquarius squaring Uranus, and that is going to be a signature for this new moon. But yeah, a sun square Uranus is definitely a challenge being a square aspect. So there's something conflicting here and have to work through and frustrating. And it's generally a disruption and a change and kind of dislodges you again from stability. Like Aquarius isn't an earth sign, but it's still a fixed sign. So these signs that are fixed, they do not like that change. And it's almost like it's being forced upon you.
Mm-hmm.
way.
Yeah, and I think what's also interesting is that Uranus has been retrograde, right? It just recently moved
Mm-hmm.
direct.
Yep,
Yeah.
this weekend on this the 26th, 27th
Okay.
January. Yeah.
But then it's like I know it's been hanging out in my first house for like a while now. Like so people have been experienced kind of this shift in whatever area of their house Uranus falls in, or
Mm-hmm.
whatever area of their chart Uranus falls in. Um so it's like kind of adding this extra, maybe it's like a bit of a strain to that area.
I mean, yeah, it's definitely a strain because Uranus wants to break free, and especially in earth signs, if their signs are the material, practical world, being more fixed in that area, Uranus wants to kind of remove itself from those agreements and those systems that have been established in that area of your life. And it creates a lot of disruption and it is not harmonious. Like that is one thing about Uranus is you're not going to get peace and harmony from him, but you are going to get change and innovation and growth, but that is hard. And so yeah, I think there's more of awareness, the sun being our ego and our awareness. I think during this day there's suddenly more of an awareness of Uranus has been in Taurus since 2017. So like how has that part of your life really gone through a significant upheaval and change for those many years, and how are you becoming more aware how that change is kind of reaching its peak point that I think we're going to feel, especially with in April when Jupiter meets Uranus and Taurus.
Yeah, absolutely. What about how much longer is Uranus? Like how long does it take to shift signs?
I don't think it's going to be moving into Gemini until 2025, maybe for like a bit, and then it will dip back into Uranus. And then definitely by like 2027, it will be in Gemini.
Mm-hmm.
So, and again, it's a long-term, slow, outer moving planet. But when we also have Jupiter making an aspect, I think that's just going to really expand that.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with you.
So that day just brings a complete shakeup to your life. And the analogy we were like talking before the show is like, you're just living your life and all of a sudden your roof falls down. Like that could be a Sun Square Uranus, or that you got new information that, by the way, that's not your job anymore. Like, and then we come into this new moon in Aquarius on the 9th. So let me share my screen.
Yeah, go ahead.
And for audio listeners, so we have the new moon at 20 degrees of Aquarius, the sun and moon there. Mercury is 7 degrees of Aquarius and Pluto's at 0. The new moon is making a square to Uranus at 19 degrees of Taurus. So just past that square, but really tight in it. And that's the main thing, is that whatever that like disruption brought up, that new moon is now, it's entirely new beginning again in that area of your life around, the more fixed things that are changing. The things that you thought were stable and established are now being transformed and changed, disrupted. And now what's new? What do you want to create?
Yeah. And in the sign of Aquarius, yeah, it's really asking you to come up with those new ideas, come up with those new plans. Like it's like a tower moment. And then we have, yeah, completely new, new soil to plant on after that.
Yeah, and just thinking too, like this is technically the lunar new year, and like I always look at like these new moons in Aquarius, like they're the lunar new years, like they do kind of almost speak to the vibe for this year. And if our vibe this year is squaring Uranus, like what do you feel about that?
Oh, yeah, that's going to be a major change here, but that can be, I mean, it can be a good thing, but yeah, it can be, like you mentioned before with Uranus, just a very uncomfortable thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think two parts of this new moon, when we had Saturn Aquarius and Jupiter Aquarius here in 2021, like what we were going through societally, post-COVID world, how did we create a system and establish that? That was really messy and a lot of things did not go well with that. And I think that, you know, destabilization of that structure of the society or how broken it was is going to really come to light under that sun square Uranus. And then as society ourselves, we kind of have to really get more serious with this new moon about the direction we want to move in now, especially this year.
Yeah, that's interesting that you say that because I felt like kind of the dust has settled from the whole COVID thing, but maybe we hadn't reached a point yet where we were able to kind of really understand all of the changes that did happen during that time. Yeah, and like you mentioned, it might be more of like noticing, oh, we actually, there was more change than we had realized.
Yeah.
Because,
And I
yeah,
go
go ahead.
ahead. No, I mean, like, and just to like all those things happen with COVID. Well, our society, especially in America, like in the United States, we're not stable. Most people can't afford rent. Most people can't afford living.
Yeah.
Most people are extremely unhappy post COVID.
Mhm. Yeah.
And it's like a foreshadowing. Like you better get something shit straight here, or you're gonna have that revolution, that Uranian aspect of like, no, we're dying, we're gonna break free.
Yeah, you did mention like cost of living in the United States is absolutely ridiculous. Like I cannot believe like just how expensive it is for people to live. It's just honestly, it's just unmanageable, I think. It's like it doesn't allow anybody any freedom, which I think really bothers me. Like a country that's supposed to be based off of freedom, like really actually
You have none.
restricts, yeah,
Yeah.
restricts its how do you say, it's people. Like we are maybe not bound by what we can say and other things, but we're bound by these financial obligations that are quite huge in comparison to other places in the world, you know?
Yeah, I agree completely. So a lot of big conversations from that new moon, and that speaks to the astrology, the last bit that we have on the 10th. Right after that new moon is that Mercury that is in early Aquarius meets Jupiter in Taurus. So again, those are big conversations, like high level thinking, like high level ideas about what do we do to move forward? How do we look at this? And it's again that square of those more uncomfortable things. So it's probably challenges, but hopeful planning, hopeful optimism. Little Jupiter's trying to help out here.
Yeah, that's good. The Jupiter's here, you did mention. Yeah, Aquarius is very evolved, a very like, yeah, it's like on to the next thing before we've even figured out what the last thing was happening. So, yeah, I feel like these conversations that we will be having will, yeah, like you said, be very high level, very, pushing the envelope and
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
yeah.
So we kind of leave that week with that note of just some major change. And I think making sure again that you're adaptable and flexible and willing, you'll find a little more ease this start of the month than if you kind of dig your heels to the sand and try not to move.
Yeah, true. I also feel like with Aquarius, you might feel a little bit more like um interested in tuning into your community and kind
Mm-hmm.
of, yeah, doing like I feel like uh, you know, in Aquarius season, this can kind of also be the remedy to everything that's happening. Um, tap into your community, tap into the people that surround you, and just learning how to nourish one another as members of the community and understanding how nourishing others also nourishes the self. I think that can be a big Aquarian theme also.
I agree. All right. Well, I think this wraps us up for this week. Do you have anything else that you wanted to add?
That's all. I hope you guys have a good first week. week-ish, a little bit over a week of February.
Yeah, enjoy it, have fun, and we'll see you next time.